With this presentation for the impact of globalization on business growth, the challenges and the opportunities, I wanted to mention how much of an opportunity this was to make a paper with all of these lovely people. This was a very difficult project, but we were able to work through it and do a great job at that, at the very least. To begin my presentation, I was in charge of the introduction and the discussion review, which were the top two sections in the rubric. To begin, globalization can be described as the growing independence of the world's economies, cultures, populations brought about by the cross-border trade in goods and services. When I'm writing a paper, I always like to describe what exactly we are trying to do, put more information into. And I think that this definition of globalization was one that stuck with me the most. And I also think that in my research of globalization, the biggest challenge was finding certain information that stuck with me. In reference to this coursework in this class, the idea of relocating and expanding could sound great in the long run, as it could provide the business with more exposure and brand recognition. When I think about globalization, I think about extending to other countries, trades, and adherence, all that. I think that that's what goes with it. However, I brought up this phrase, the rules of the game, and it's very important for any company that is doing business in any other country to understand the rules of the game, because they can violate some regulations and it could cause some more trouble. I think globalization could be a benefit to many companies into many countries, but they need to follow these rules of the game. However, globalization is still a relatively new concept. They've been using it for several decades, however, and the first bits of globalization we saw were via the ship, the railroads, and many other forms of transportation. It was even shown on a reference that people were doing globalization even before this, and they can even use the term to involve trades with their neighbors, as a form of globalization, because it was an exchange of goods. Benefits for globalization could include lower product costs, access to more products and new markets, but the downsides could be described through tariffs or compliance challenges, which makes some sense because a lot of tariffs go through items that are taxed through different countries, and it's a little bit more of a challenge that way. And like I mentioned earlier with the rules of the game, some companies might not know the rules of the game of other countries, and it could be hard for them to make trades if they don't know what they're getting into. And that's why it's important to do some background research on some of these countries to make sure that they are following the rules and that they are complying to their standards in terms of trades or just culture in general. It has been a staple, globalization has, since the 19th century, and the first wave of globalization was propelled by the steamships, the railroads, the telegraph, and other breakthroughs, which I had also mentioned previously.